Welcome back, and thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective, the podcast with subject matter experts in marketing. So, tech stacks are easy to pull together today, right? Or are you playing Jenga without having your eyes on the piece of tech to fit your strategy? It's difficult when you consider that we've been buying and implementing so many pieces of tech so quickly, but now those are entrenched deeply within our systems, and many have no processes written up to support them. Anita Breareton is the founder and CEO of Cabinet M, and she's a subject matter expert at Marketing Technology Stacks. And on this episode, we'll discuss tech stacks, strategy, processes, workflows, and even a little bit about snowflakes. So let's tune in to a tech stack expert with a stack shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Anita, thank you so much for joining me today on A Shark's Perspective. If you would, please tell us a little bit about your career and your background to date.
Nice to speak with you, Kenneth. Certainly. So I am a longtime marketer. I often say I was in marketing before digital marketing existed. So I've grown up through the marketing ranks, and I did that for, close to 25 years, working in startups in high tech all of that time. And then I segued out of that for a period of time, and I became an angel investor and ended up running an angel group. But the lure of startups drew me back in, and I ended up working for a period of time as an interim CEO in an e-commerce company. So I went from high-tech infrastructure products to e-commerce, and then ultimately to founding my current company, Cabinet M.
So when we talk about the MarTech stack, the one that Scott Brinker puts together and scares the hell out of everybody, kind of, if you will, describe what the MarTech stack is. The technology landscape is called the MarTech 5000, but now there are thousands more technologies that fit on there.
Yes, certainly. One of the things that we've seen, Kenneth, over the last few years is this explosion in marketing technology. And it's not just pure marketing technology. It's any technology that's used by the organization to acquire, engage, and retain customers. So sometimes that technology exists within the sales organization or within the customer service organization. And what Scott has tried to do with his landscape is to get his arms around all of that different technology and present it in one big visual picture. So, not too many years ago, there were 750 logos on that picture, and it was something that you could easily put on your wall and use as a reference guide. And we've worked with Scott over the last several years, giving him information from our database. But now it's just become impossible to track in one big visual landscape. You would have to blow that up to almost wall size for it to be useful. But the important point is that we've now got, over 10,000 products that marketers and sales and customer service folks can use to acquire, engage, and retain customers, which is exciting and daunting at the same time.
Exactly. So when you're working with companies today, are you running into more instances now where large organizations are trying to get hold of all of their technology, or is it driven more because of a lot of digital transformation efforts? I mean, it seems like we're coming to a point that's sort of an impasse where there's digital transformation that's got to happen, and there are too many pieces of technology out there.
So the key driver, I think, today, so IT does a good job of tracking all of the technology that they acquire and implement within the organization. Historically, marketing has not done a particularly good job of that. So what we find in organizations is that with all of this explosion of new technology, people have been spending across the organization like drunken sailors, swiping credit cards, these new SaaS tools without any centralized oversight. And now they've reached a tipping point where technology spend is typically representing 29% of the marketing budget, according to Gartner, which in turn is about 3 to 4% of revenue. So it's significant spend. And companies are asking, the executive suite is asking, what are we spending? What is this spend for? What is it delivering in terms of performance? Are we exposed from a security standpoint? And are we compliant with all the data regulations? And many marketing teams don't have the ability to answer that question because they don't have their arms around everything. So we're seeing this movement towards centralized oversight of marketing technology.
Yep. Are you seeing more instances where people still today feel the need to buy the newest and shiniest penny each time? Or are they just sticking their heads in the sand and trying to avoid it until the next version 2.0 comes out and then there's something else newer? What are you starting to see with these teams who are looking at their tech stacks?
So I think two things. It's really funny. So
Yeah.
yes, there is always the attraction to the new shiny thing. I think it comes in our genetic code as marketers. I think there's a special gene construct that attracts us to the new shiny thing. We're like magpies. Um, but having said that, I think one of the big challenges for corporations is that a tech stack in marketing is not a discrete set of building blocks. It's more like a jigsaw puzzle, and many of these pieces fit together. And so it's not so easy to just toss one out and bring one in, because if you don't know exactly how things are connected and you pick a piece up, you could bring the whole thing tumbling down. So we're seeing people really focus on the platforms that they have, particularly the big ones, the CRMs, the marketing automation systems, and making sure that they're logically connected to the rest of the tech stack, that there's a roadmap in place from the vendor that's going to support them over time, and that they have a rational plan for thinking about how they evolve their tech stack. So I think the shiny things exist around the periphery, but people are really digging into the core of their tech stack these days.
When people start building out these tech stacks and start lining up the pieces they have, ideally they would align their technology with their strategies, once they've put all of the pieces of that puzzle together. But are you finding where sometimes the technology didn't match the intent of that strategy with what they bought and tried to build?
Oh, absolutely. I think, there's so many issues that we're seeing people facing, and one is exactly that, where, when they go back and they look at a system that's being used and they can't answer, why did we buy this? And has it met those goals? And so we see this big rationalization happening around tech stacks. And one of the things that's fascinating is we always coach people to start with an audit of all of their technology. And when they do that, the
Mm-hmm.
first thing that they find is that obviously they've got products that nobody's using. Somebody swiped a credit card for a 30-day trial and then forgotten that that kicks into, a paid subscription. And, so that's been long forgotten. So they uncover those. They uncover, redundant platforms and contracts. So in that case, it's multiple contracts for the same product, and the same product being, deployed in multiple places, um, in a completely separate instance. And so that, they can save a lot of money by consolidating contracts and bringing everybody onto the same instance of the platform. But where
Exactly.
it gets
Yeah.
really challenging is when they look at redundant platforms from the perspective of functionality. So you could have an email platform and a marketing automation platform that actually were acquired to do the same exact thing, different people. And so that's the hard work, rationalizing those two things. And to your point, it goes back to, what are the objectives, the business objectives that you're trying to accomplish? And then how does the technology serve those objectives? You can't skip that part of the process. It's too easy to go and, buy a product. But if you don't do the upfront work where you're specifying, you know, this is the strategy, this is the technology we need to realize the objectives of that strategy, and this is how we'll measure the success, then you just end up with this bloated, redundant set of products and a very expensive marketing tech stack.
Exactly. Not only that, you also have a lot of people. I mean, we heard similar speakers that we know speak about this. You've got people who feel like they have ownership as well with a lot of these tech pieces. It could be that they have relationships with the vendors and maybe it's something they use in their own day to day. And that's what makes it even more difficult outside of just the technical alignment with redundancy or not. But you see a lot of personal and selfish reasons, for lack of a better phrase, on how people want to own a particular piece of tech.
Yeah, absolutely, you do. And where we see that most often is in an M&A environment where two
Exactly.
companies have come together and they have to rationalize the stack. So it's funny because I've just been started to write a workbook around merging stacks, and I have a section in there about you have to take the
Yeah.
emotion out of this. because you get vested emotionally. You think if somebody's questioning a piece of technology you've brought on board, that it's a reflection of your competence. And that's not the case. It has to just go back black and white to the strategy and whether that piece of equipment supports that strategy going forward.
Well, I worked in MarTech for a pretty good chunk of my own career, and I can tell you that it was always for any sales team I worked on those pieces, building those relationships was as crucial as building out the right kind of technology. I think someone else described to me, a friend of ours, Jason Katz, said that the sales teams in MarTech are generally exceptional and do a really good job at building those relationships and knowing how to integrate their tech. So you're introducing a series of interactive technology stacks. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so what we've done, on Cabinet M, sitting under our infrastructure, we have a database of 10,000 marketing technology products. And one of the things that we thought would be helpful is to chunk that down into key categories, produce a tech stack that is interactive. What we're doing is distributing a URL link. It takes you to a visual stack with layers and logos, and you can click through those logos to see a
Sure.
description of the product and the vendor's website. So it's a quick reference guide. So instead of just being a flat drawing that sits on the wall, you can click through and very quickly see, oh, this is a product that might be of interest to me. So we've launched the email stack. We're about to launch a direct mail stack, and we're working on a CDP stack. So we're trying to target areas of technology where people have a lot of interest and just deliver these as quick reference guides.
Well, CDP in particular makes me think within the verticals of the core groupings of tech stacks, is there any category that you see people using the technology well within a category the most? Or is there an area where people are using too much redundancy, too much overlap, too many of the wrong pieces? Where are you seeing that with the categories of clients that you work with today?
So I think the categories that are confusing are CDP is
Yeah.
definitely one. And there's something like 45 vendors. And, we're working with David Robb and some of those vendors to help us figure out how we segment, because you can't just look at 45 different vendors and try to figure it out. Um, so
And that's just even CDPs. That doesn't even count what a CDP will do that, say, a data hub will not, or
exactly.
some other nearby vertical.
But one of the things that's interesting is that, we saw the rise of CDP as a concept, right? That was the shiny new thing a few years ago. And then we went through this period where people said, oh, CDPs are too complicated. Um, so only big companies can think about CDPs. And now this is like, starting last year, it's kind of become the era of CDPs where you see people talking about, oh, we're going to acquire a CDP, but they don't have any way to parse this. So we're working on that. We think that is a very important technology area. And then the other one that we've really enjoyed, that we'll be releasing over the next 2 weeks, is direct mail. Because direct mail doesn't appear in anybody's technology stack because everybody thinks about it as,
Mm-hmm.
an offline marketing program. So, not something that should appear in the stack. But there are actually over 170 products that are available to help companies create, produce, and deliver and track the performance of direct mail campaigns. And the response rates for direct mail are very good, even though it feels like an old-fashioned marketing program. They're very good. You can get very good response rates, and they direct mail integrates
Couldn't
well
agree
with
more.
online programs. So it's a nice, yeah, it's a nice amplification program. So we're excited about that one. The one thing that we haven't put on the list yet, but is on my personal list, is CRM, because there's an
Mm.
extraordinary number of CRM platforms, and how you begin to parse those, um, is everybody thinks Salesforce, but then there's the Zohos, the Sugar, the Microsoft Dynamics. We are personally using a startup called Spiro that we love. So I really want to tackle that and try and parse that category down.
Yeah, and then there's so many of them that are pieces like Marketo that sit on Adobe well, and that's exactly why they bought them.
Exactly. And to your the other part of your question, I think that marketing automation is the one category that um, people seem to have their arms around, but really it's because, I think we have
Hmm.
one, two, three, four main players. We have, Eloqua at the very top
Hmm.
end, then Marketo, Pardot, and HubSpot. Um, but I think there's room for innovation in that category. But for now, you know, those guys are very much the dominant players.
It still amazes me, though, that despite the fact that they've got their arms around that, they're still not omni-channeling more from a marketing standpoint.
Yep.
When you're going in and talking to clients and they bring you on board and start giving them advice, who are the groups that are typically pushing back? Is it always marketing? Does it come from agencies? Where do you see pushback from? What types of groups?
So we don't actually see pushback. And part of that is because we don't tell companies what platforms they should or should not be using. So what we have
Yeah,
is our own platform that gives them the
gotcha.
ability to audit everything that they're using and then report on performance and integration. So we're giving them the enabling technology so that they can have those discussions. Now, having said that, we're always happy to share aggregated insights. So, that we've learned from other companies. So, we help people with the structure of their tech stack. We help people think about how they should approach auditing their tech stack. But when it comes down to the actual platforms, we do not guide, um, companies to one or the other. And part of that has to do with when you look across marketing tech stacks, they actually are all snowflakes. It's extraordinary how much difference there is stack to stack. And just as an example, so if you think we have 10,000 products in our database, and when somebody goes onto our platform to build their tech stack, the first thing they're doing is dragging and dropping all the logos of the products that they're using into the stack that they've created on our site. When we sign a new customer, invariably there are 20 products
Sure.
that we don't have in our database, which, when, we thought we'd done a good job at cataloging 10,000 of them, but every time there's another 20 products. And that doesn't even include the products that are, have been produced internally. So in many companies, there's as much homegrown technology as there is acquired technology.
Internally, as far
Exactly.
as legacy systems go, what effect have you seen that have on a lot of how people look at building out their tech stacks?
It has a big impact, and particularly if the company has leveraged a lot of homegrown technology. One of the key areas that we see development happening internally is around integration. So, two pieces of equipment don't naturally work together. There may be somebody in
Hmm.
the organization that builds integration code to combine, to integrate two pieces of acquired technology. Rarely is that documented. Um, Rarely is it made visible to the greater organization. And so, where it catches up with people is when they start to look at evolving systems, and they take out a system. I was with somebody that had taken out, he joined a company, didn't like their CRM, had pulled it out, not knowing that there was code
Hmm.
written between that CRM and their marketing automation system. And at the time I talked to
Wow.
him, he'd not been able to run a marketing campaign in 8 weeks. And that's not unusual. We see it all the time. So one of our big mantras is you have to track the internal technology as well as the acquired technology.
So, when you see tech stacks now, what do you sort of see on the road ahead from a bigger picture standpoint?
So we see a couple of things. We see companies trying to shrink the number of products that
Yeah.
they're using. Um, that dream of, one vendor will provide it all is just unrealistic. It will never happen. But people are much more cognizant of looking at the functionality of the different platforms and trying to eliminate redundancy. So we're seeing a lot of that activity. Um, and then in terms of new technology, people are, you know, everybody's talking about blockchain and
Hmm.
AI. And just to be clear, those aren't products; those are enabling technologies. And it's not, people are just, it's the jargon and the buzz. We're not seeing that really folded into the tech stack yet, products that have been enabled by those technologies, but that's on the horizon. Um, I think one of the areas that continues to fascinate me that I don't think companies are paying enough attention to is the voice assistant
Oh, yeah.
world, the Alexas. And um, it's almost like everybody said, okay, that's too hard to figure out, or it's not clear how we market through those. Um, but that's going to be a big missed opportunity if people don't pay attention to that. And that's a near, here and now thing.
Agreed, yeah. So looking ahead, other than Scott Brinker throwing his hands in the air and saying, I give, what do you think will make navigating the tech stack easier? And conversely, other than just volume of products, what do you think will continue to make it more difficult?
So I think what will make it easier is when companies adopt process and workflow around developing the tech stack. I think that's essentially critical. And it's funny because um, somebody asked me about, they were thinking about writing a marketing book, and they said, oh, here's five
Yes.
titles I'm thinking of, what do you think people will read? And I said, none of those. There are too many books right now. Everybody's written a book, including me. I wrote a workbook, but you have to have something that's really helpful and meaningful. And the one book I always go back to was published in the 1980s, and it's called Marketing Warfare. And really the message of that book is the importance of strategy. And, I think what technology did was it set a lot of people loose to just start doing without thinking. And so we've seen over the last few years, oh, here's a cool new piece of technology that's going to let us really expand our presence on social media without
Mm-hmm.
thinking, what is the strategy around, what are we trying to accomplish on social media, and what's the workflow around measuring all of this. And so I think we're coming back to a time of being more rational. And I think it's really strategy and process that are going to help us absorb all of this technology.
Yeah, I think we've been living in a world where CMOs have just had too much budget and too little knowledge, and it's been the Wild West trying to fill in the gaps, but that's just me. So, how do you keep up with all the change?
So, so that's a really good question because
I'm assuming it's a lack of sleep and lots of caffeine.
yeah, well, there is lack of sleep, but the other thing is, I've got the best job in the world because we're constantly looking for things that are happening that are innovative in technology because we have to keep our database up to date. And so, we feel like we're pretty much on the forefront of what's going on. And then we have hundreds of people managing their technology stacks on our platform. So we have a lot of aggregated data about what people are using and in what combination and what the layers of the tech stack look like, how many products people are using. So it's just really exciting. And I love every minute of it. And for somebody who um, is a senior marketing person, and I use the word senior, in terms of years of experience, I have a lot of years of experience. It's really nice to be at this point of my career and not be obsolete and,
Right.
irrelevant like many of my old CMO peers.
Yeah, agreed. Well, I met you at a marketing technology conference, and you obviously spoke to the group. You did an amazing presentation. You spoke to a lot of the attendees there. What did you sort of get from your feel? This was a group that was all responsible for a lot of technology decisions. When you went to that conference and any others where you speak, what are you generally hearing from marketers about technology and where we are today? Are they feeling a sense of overwhelm? Is it still with a ton of curiosity? They can defeat the world. What are you just sort of hearing?
So I think it's a balance, right? So there is the curiosity, there's the excitement around innovation, but many of the people that we talk to have landed in organizations that haven't been tracking any of this stuff, and so they're buried in the details of getting their hands around everything. And now I think, one of the things about marketing that's changed over the last 10 years is it's right in the front line, of the revenue path. So, marketers are now being judged on revenue and customer lifetime value. Well, one of the big impacts on customer lifetime value is, what it costs to acquire, engage, and retain customers. And that comes down in many cases, in most cases, really to the technology being deployed. So every big system that you deploy, impacts um, customer lifetime value and can impact it in a positive and a negative way. So I think they feel a level of pressure that they haven't felt before, and then increasingly we're starting to see companies make build or buy decisions, which for me, I had to really work to get my head around that, because with all the products that are available to buy, it's extraordinary that these big corporations are really now formalizing the process around making a build or buy decision when they're looking at a marketing technology platform. We've seen a very large multi-billion-dollar company just recently develop their own CDP. If you want to say, well, why? Because there are like 45 to choose from, but that's happening. So there's a lot of pressure there in making that analysis and recommendation. Sure. And then, of course, you've got the wonderful overarching digital transformation mission. And, that's this great term that can be defined a million different ways. But in many cases, however it's defined, it's that marketing operations person or the CMO that is the stucky when it comes to shepherding that and driving that across the organization. So I think there's a lot of pressure, and I don't know that it's that marketing ops people are overwhelmed, because I think the people that take those jobs are very pragmatic and process oriented, and so they chip away. But I do think that there's an incredible amount of pressure and responsibility being placed on that organization these days. This is still a very exciting time to be in marketing and marketing technology. The pace of innovation is extraordinary, and we shouldn't be daunted by that. We should be excited by that. And then the second thing is that as we build these technology stacks, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that we ultimately are using this technology to connect with and influence human beings.
Couldn't agree more. Anita, it's that special time in the show. Are you ready for the 5 most important questions that you are going to be asked today?
Okay.
All right, here we go. Marketing technology or digital marketing?
For me, marketing technology.
Going back to your degree, psychology or technology?
I love that I have a psychology degree, but I wish I had a technology degree.
There you go. The current MarTech stack or a stack of delicious pancakes from IHOP?
Oh, the marketing tech stack.
I don't know if I'd go with you on that one. Entrepreneur or angel investor?
Entrepreneur.
And number 5, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Oh, biscuits.
So Anita, where can people find out more about you, follow your thought leadership, find out more about Cabinet M and more?
Connect with me on LinkedIn. Follow us on Twitter at CabinetM1, and check out our platform at CabinetM.com.
Thank you so much, Anita, for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
Thanks, Kenneth. This was fun.
So that was my conversation with Anita Breareton, the founder and CEO of Cabinet M, and she's a subject matter expert at marketing technology stacks. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from our conversation with her. First, as Anita said, a tech stack in marketing is not a discrete set of building blocks. It's more like a jigsaw puzzle, and many of those pieces fit together. And so it's not easy to just toss one out and bring one in, because if you don't know exactly how things are connected and you pick a piece up, you could bring the whole thing tumbling down. So make sure that you have a roadmap and make sure that your technology matches the strategy and the intent of what you wanted to do and where you wanted to go. Second, tech stacks, as she said, are snowflakes. They're each different. There's no one cookie cutter only approach to implementing these, as their tentacles, if you will stretch out and connect with a lot of other pieces of your tech, including many of your legacy systems. What will make this easier is when, as she said, businesses adopt a process and workflow. Think through your own stack. Do you have an inventory of everything in your stack and processes written up that point back to your strategy? Always be rational in your purchases and think bigger picture. Third, whatever piece of tech you buy to automate or improve any part of your marketing technology, make sure to do this and keep your focus on the customer first. Tech should help your business, but help your business keep its focus on the customer. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. It's been my privilege to spend this time with you in order to discuss another one of the many components that makes up marketing today. As Bruce Lee said, the successful warrior is the average man with laser-like focus. So men and women, go be focused and join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.